Begin. Fusion deployment. Deploy our Cartesia onto the field here. As we Quem send from the deck a Mercurier if you have a way to banish it, which we do through the Magna Hut. Now with the Albaz in our hand, that is a really good play with our Cartesia on field, which will allow us to go into another Mirror Jade. Now, of course, not with the Mirror Jade currently on field. What we could do is we could Branded Banishment, Reborn from Engrave, to then fuse away the Mirror Jade, and then we could go Cartesia into an Albion, into a Mirror Jade, or if this Mirror Jade is sent to the graveyard through the fusion of Cartesia, the Quem could just Reborn it, or the Banishment can Reborn it. We have a lot of plays here. Let's talk about our forms of disruption. We could Reborn from Engrave, which will be a monster, possibly like Mirror Jade, to be another disruption, plus fuse the opponent's field, which could be a disruption. It's up to 2 disruptions, possibly. The Mirror Jade itself is a non-target monster banish, and we do have an Albaz Engrave, so we could send a Ridbrum, and then Ridbrum could Reborn the Albaz and then fuse the opponent's field. That is about 4 disruption. And then the Cartesia can essentially turn into a disruptive play. That'll be about 5. And then Quem, either with the Banishment, is going to be sharing the extra form of disruption or be the card that reborns the Albaz. So I would say we're at a healthy 5 disruption to play through. We're going to be activating our Cast Your Field spell, grabbing a Unicorn, special summon our Unicorn, searching our deck for our Kashtira Birth. Now, this could be quite devastating. A lot of people see Kashtira as only Fenrir being the main disruptor, but if you're playing a graveyard-focused deck, the Birth, banishing 3 cards in the graveyard, that's nothing to scoff at. We're going to be setting up with the Shining Sark, then summon our Gadget Trio, searching for our Turn Silence. Shining Sark now searching for a Dark Magician. Shining Sark, Dark Magician, special summoning itself onto the field. Gandora G is now here, and this is big. We have to stop this, right? Is it a quick effect, a trigger effect? Is it an open game state effect? Let's read it. You could pay half your life points. It's not quick, it's not a trigger, and it does have the ability to destroy as many other cards on the field as possible. Completely wipe the field. Thus, we have to respond. It is not optional. We're going to be responding with a Branded Banishment, Reborning Quem to fuse away the Gandora G. As I said, Banishment could be a double disruption. We used up one of the disruptions to then summon into another disruption with the ability to now pop a card in the field. Try Heart is here. Now, this is similar to Baguska, but definitely different. It's going to force all face-up monsters into defense. They're not negated, but we are now unaffected by the activated effects of defense position monsters. Your Mirror Jade, I'm unaffected. Your Borreload popping me, I'm unaffected. Your Albaz attempting to fuse with me, I'm unaffected. What can Branded do against this unaffected Tryheart? Tryheart, force them all into D. As we now activate our Birth to attempt to birth our Unicorn back in the field. Borreload Fury is going to be using up one of our 5 disruption, now down to 3. Say goodbye to that Birth. To battle we go. Take out the Cartesia, which has the effect to fuse only within the main phase. As we now Mirror Jade, non-target monster, attempt to banish the Tryheart, triggering the Quem, reborning the Kit adding back the Engrave Banishment, as we then return the in-hand Albaz back in the deck, triggering Cartesia to add back from Engrave, as we now Titanclad summon from the deck Albaz, which of course we cannot attempt to fuse the Tryheart as it's unaffected. What is good? How do we deal with this Tryheart? Anaconda. Okay. Anaconda, send from the deck, super polymerization. Now I am able to fuse away your Tryhearts. Be gone. Nicely done into a Rinbrum. Ain't no way. Banned in the TCG. Verte Anaconda getting us out of this situation for game. Wow. The Tryheart should have been unstoppable. Now, the Banishment isn't out. If you have Banishment, you would just Reborn from Engrave and then be able to fuse away, but that would require another turn. Special summon a Unicorn, Gadget Trio searching for our Shining Sark. Shining Sark is going to be adding a card that mentions Shining Sark from our deck. We got the Ties That Bind. Ties That Bind, summoning from the deck a Silent Magician 0 and Silent Swordsman. as we also follow up with a Birth, ready to banish face-down cards. Well, the cards in grave face-down banish, so they're not going to be triggering if they have any great effects off being banished. Now, what does this effect, this field, entail? In addition to the Birth being able to banish from the grave, the Unicorn being able to banish from the extra deck, they're not really forms of disruption. The actual disruption we have here is going to be tied to something like the Silent Magician 0. When your opponent activates a spell card, you're going to be able to negate the activation. Now, Silent Swordsman, what does it do? When your opponent activates a card that targets a Shining Sark or a monster that mentions it, you're going to negate the activation. We can kind of consider that as a disruption, as it negates the activation but does not destroy. Maybe we just have Silent Magician as our only form of disruption, plus our Forbidden Droplet being able to negate a monster on the field. Gadget Trio, of course, does nothing. Now, the Shining Sark does have a special ability. If your opponent special summons a monster from the grave specifically, you can discard a spell, which we don't have, to then send that monster to the grave. So we pretty much have negate a spell and negate as many monsters as we want. That is it. Let's go. Silent Magician 0 and the Silent Swordsman, but boosting. Are we not going to negate that fusion deployment as we summon a Cartesia? Aluber is going to be able to dodge an effect that would attempt to negate it. And that is what we're, the Cartesia is going to be able to dodge something like a Droplet if they don't send a monster. The problem is, by sending a monster, we can't respond with the Cartesia unless we have, let's say, a Retribution Engrave. You could chain Retribution Engrave to a Forbidden Droplet, and then you could chain Cartesia to your own trap, thus dodging a card like Droplet. We, of course, don't have that play. No trap, no spell activatable to chain to the Droplet. If we had a Branded Opening, we could have chained Branded Opening to the Droplet to then fuse. Negate, no search for you, mate. Triggering the Unicorn, looking at the extra deck. Say goodbye to the Anaconda. Now, could we have summoned the Anaconda? At your locals, probably, because you would have not known that the fusion deployment states that you can only summon from the extra deck fusion monsters. Mulcharmy, dead. Absolutely dead. Ain't no way. Now, we're going to be able to fuse with the Albaz in hand, thanks to the Cartesia, to still be able to make our Mirror Jade play. The problem is, what if the opponent top-decked a card like Triple Tactics Talent to just take control of the Mirror Jade? There we go. We think we're safe with the Mirror Jade, but we are absolutely not. Say goodbye to the second copy of Mirror Jade being banished face down as we Triple Tactics Talent attempt to take control. What do? Do we banish ourselves? Wait, Unicorn comes back with Birth. That literally does nothing. Am I right? Yes? Okay, we'll summon a Fenrir instead. It's fine. Fenrir activating to grab a Unicorn. We can normal summon the Unicorn. We're going to also Shining Sark search for a turn silence. And let's get swinging. On the attack, say goodbye banishing, full loss on the direct attack. 8,900 damage. Lethal with your own Mirror Jade. Wait, how's Mirror Jade in attack position? You gotta summon this in defense, mate. Ain't no way. Yeah, I think that was a big mistake. It had to be summoned in defense to play around something like the Triple Tactics Talent, as we saw right there. All right, let's hop into game 3. Starting this off with a Gold Sark banish from the deck. We are going to be banishing a Mercurier. Now with the Branded in red, we could target Engraven Albaz to then fuse with our hand plus the field, which will then trigger the Quem to reborn the Engrave properly summoned Mirror Jade to non-target monster banish again. So because of Quem, we did not need a banishment. Uh-oh, Harpy Feather Duster plus a Super Polymerization and a Forbidden Droplet. Harpy Feather Dust away. We're going to be responding with our Branded in red. We're going to Forbidden Droplet. Preemptively negate the Quem to make use out of the Feather Duster so that the Quem does not reborn the Mirror Jade. Grab the Albaz, but we could just make a Mirror Jade off of this anyway. It's not that big of a deal. You stopped me from reborning Mirror Jade, but you did not stop me from summoning a Mirror Jade. As we go into an Albion branded dragon, Albion branded dragon is going to go straight into a Mirror Jade. We're going to have non-target monster banish up Mirror Jade, plus an Ash Blossom, plus a Rinbrum reborn the Albaz to fuse the opponent's field. So even after a Forbidden Droplet and a Harpy Feather Duster, we somehow still have 3 disruption. How is this deck real? Future Silence searching for a Gadget Trio. Trio on summon is going to get negated by Ash Blossom. We do have the power of Super Poly, though. Ash wins here. Well, it looks like you are right, yes? As we set not even enough in our hand to use the Super Polymerization. What is good? Everything to attack position, 11,000 damage. Turn Silence. What is this going to do? Add a monster. What? Okay, so we do have Super Poly. We can now do it. There you go. Discard the Gadget Trio. Fuse away the Albion and the Mirror Jade into our very own Starving Venom Fusion. Starving Venom Fusion is on summon, is going to be triggering the Mirror Jade because it left the field by card effect, as we now have the Starving Venom activating to boost up to 8,300 attack. Now, if the Mirror Jade wipes out the Starving Venom, it does have another effect that activates. If this Fusion Summon card leaves the field, by being destroyed, you can destroy all opponent's special summon monsters. You could say goodbye to that token. Cartesia, is it okay to be committing to the field when we know that the Starving Venom is going to wipe out that commitment? Well, Cartesia adds back anyway during the end phase, so not that big of a deal. Keeping the Branded Sword in hand so that we could discard it to add back a banished card, like an Albaz or a Mercurier. That'd be quite good. We do have the Banishment, which has the ability to reborn that Mirror Jade very easily. Turn Silence, adding the Gadget Trio into Shining Sark into what? Where are we going from here? Shining Sark it up. We're waiting to summon that Mirror Jade. Ties that bind. So what I would do is on resolution, read this card. You need your toggle on. And if I read that it requires the Gadget Trio on field, I would right now reborn the Mirror Jade, banish the Gadget Trio, and win. Is that how this works? You control a Shining Sarcophagus and a monster that mentions it. It does require the Gadget Trio to be on the field. So exactly what I said. On resolution, reborn the Mirror Jade, and Shining Sark is triggering to send the Mirror Jade to the grave because you special summoned a monster from Engrave. Say goodbye to the Gadget Trio. Non-target monster banished. This effect pretty much never triggers. Mirror Jade was not properly fusion summoned, so it does not trigger Engrave to wipe out the end phase monsters, which there are none. Albaz being reborn from Engrave, even though there's no other monster to be fusing with. The Gold Sark actually went through the full 2 turns. That is unheard of to add back the banished turn 1 Mercurier. We are now going to Branded in White, summon a Masquerade Blazing Dragon. Have not seen that card in a while as it attacks for game. Nicely done. I do want to point this out, that their opening hand was a Gold Sark and a Call by the Grave, plus a Quem and a Cartesia. So what I want to say is that a lot of people would have very simply used Gold Sark to banish Tragedy. Tragedy would then search for Alubur. You then normal summon Alubur and lose to an impermanence, right? You would then have a dead Quem, a dead Cartesia, a dead Call by the Grave, all because you tunnel visioned on that Gold Sark going straight for the Alubur play. You do have to mix things up. Make use of the other cards in your hand. We banished a Mercurier instead. Begin. Starting this off with a normal summon Arvata, which will give us the protection from any hand disruptions that is a monster. The Kieran could pop the Amble Whale, which could reborn the Masquerina to turn into a form of double disruption through a Little Knight Banish and a Little Knight Banish. And then with the Apollo USA, we have triple Monster Negate. So that's going to be 5 disruption with just the Amble Whale, Apollo, and Masquerina. The Skyburn's going to pop a card on the field. The Kieran's going to be able to reborn in Arvata to pop a card in the field. And then the Kieran is going to, with the Arvata on field, give us a Monster Negate. And we also have the Amble Whale other effect, which will pop a card in the field if a link 3 or lower is destroyed on either side of the field. Also, we have Promethean Princess Engrave to pop a monster on special summon. That's going to be about 10 disruptions with a 6-card hand. Is this good enough? Let's find out. Upstart Goblin, randomly drawing into a Silva. Allure Darkness, draw 2, banish a Dark from our hand. Say goodbye to the Genix Alley Birdman. Setting Triple Tactics down to then discard 4 cards. We're going to be chaining the Kirin right here, right now. Now, this does give the possibility of the 10 disruptions turning into even more as we draw into hand traps. We did draw into a Max C, but maxing against Dark World likely will result in us decking out. Now, what you always want to think about if there's an Apollo USA on the field is chain link blocking. Let's say you're playing branded and you have a fusion, deployment, and a branded opening. You would deploy, chain opening, summon an Aluber and an Albaz. Albaz chain 1, Aluber chain 2. Now the Apollo cannot negate something like the Albaz. And cards like that apply in any deck where we are chain link blocking. We're going to protect our Silva, protect our Rainbow, as the Mothman could potentially now be negated by the Apollo USA. Or the Nessie. Nessie protect the Mothman. Or even better, the opponent's trigger effects will then protect you, because if they are the non-turn player, their trigger effects are on the highest chain link. They'd have to say no to Garunix in order to activate something like Apollo. Amble Whale also triggering to reborn the Masquerina. Reborn, Garunix, Reborn, Nessie, and from the deck, the Danger Snake. Mothman, both players draw a card, then discard. Rainbow searching for a Silva as the Silva Engrave reborns itself onto the field. We now have Grapha. On being sent to the grave by discarding, destroy a card in the field. We have Apollo negate the Grapha as we chain the Skyburn to pop multiple cards in the field. We're now down to 8 disruptions. What is good? Negated Grapha. Now, Grapha doesn't activate a reborn from Engrave. We are now going to be chaining Max C. Is that a huge mistake? We have how many cards on our deck? 22 special summons, and we then lose. Randomly discarding our Snake to summon our Danger Nessie, draw into an Upstart Goblin. Danger Snake reborning itself from Engrave. Birdman return back the Snake to come forth its special summon as we now make a Baron DeFleur ready to destroy a card in the field and negate anything. Now, we're going to be triggering Promethean Princess to pop the Baron DeFleur. Baron DeFleur is going to negate that Promethean Princess as the Arvata now negates the Baron DeFleur. We're now down to 6 disruptions left. How do we still have that many? It's insane. By popping the Kirin, we could trigger the Kirin to reborn from Engrave. Arvata also reborning the Ponix. Did we already use the effect of Kirin to reborn? We did, so we're down to 5 disruption. Chupacabra being discarded by the Mothman, randomly drawing as Chupacabra attempts to reborn the Mothman Engrave. Apollo negates. Drone Lockbird, another form of disruption that we randomly drawn into, protecting us from the deck out. If we know we're playing Drone Lockbird in our deck, it is safe to use Max C against a Dark World deck, as long as the Drone Lockbird is not the final card in your deck that you draw into. Negate the Chupacabra. Danger Snake. Masquerina is not able to use its effect because Promethean Princess. We're now down to 2 disruption. Amble Whale popping a card. We're now down to 1 disruption. Apollo is our final disruption. And you cannot, I mean, you can try to negate a danger in hand, but if your negate does not destroy or banish, the danger will activate again. It's not a hard once per turn. Never Ash Blossom, never Apollo against a danger. And if you're playing against a branded deck, they have Light and Darkness Dragon Lord, which will continually negate your danger as you reduce it down to 0 defense, wiping away its full negates. It's now making Azalea. We do have that 1 disruption left. Azalea taking out the Fire King Island, which then wipes out the remaining disruption, but we're also left with nothing ourselves. What is this? We're going to Ponix, Engrave, add back during the standby phase. In response to the turn previously where it was destroyed, the original Sinful, return Poplar to grab a Ponix from the deck. We're now summoning our Diablo Star. Diablo Star on summon, setting up from the deck a Wanted Seeker to be used during the next turn. As we now summon a Ponix, Ponix is going to not be killing itself to then trigger the Garunix. We're instead going in with the Diablo Star. Now, what is this effect of Azalea doing? At the start of the damage step, if this card battles, you could banish 1 spell from the graveyard, destroy the opponent's monster. say goodbye to Diablo Star, as we now get to have the effect that we wanted, right? Garunix. So what I'm thinking here is, do we have a Kirin in the deck to pop with the Garunix? Otherwise, this effect's not that good. Kirin has been semi-limited. Let's look Engrave. Double Kirin Engrave. That is not a good play for us now. Do we have anything good to destroy from the deck? If we destroy an Volcanix, it could summon a Garunix, but we made that play so much earlier in the duel. This is just nothing. What are we popping? Yeah, Volcanix did nothing, as I was thinking it would do nothing, but we did use up the effect of the Azalea, wipe it out with our Sacred King Garunix. Fire King is pretty much out of juice here. Now, even with it being out of juice, we have a Call by the Grave, we have an Imperm, we have an Imperm, and we still have Promethean Princess and Grave. Still 4 disruption thanks to all the non-engine we drew into off of the Max C. Zephyros off the top of the deck. Interesting. A good way to use Zephyros is returning back the Dark World field spell, which we of course do not have. Normal summon Zephyros, take out Eponyx. That is not a good play. Wanted Seeker is going to be adding Diablo Star from Engrave back to our hand, and then have the follow-up play of being able to draw a card. Eponyx continually adding itself back. Do we have any great extra deck monsters to turn these Eponyxes into? As the Wanted Seeker returns back Original Sinful for that randomly drawn Imperm as we discard it to summon a Diablo Star just for its beatdown. I mean, Diablo Star being 2,500 is quite large. 6,200 damage, but not enough for game. We're actually going to be going another turn. What can HFS draw into off the top of the deck to make a huge comeback? We have to know that Engrave, the Grapha is summonable as long as we can get a Dark World on the field. Grapha return the Dark World back to then summon itself, and then Rainbow could return the Grapha back to the hand. We can make big plays. Goki Pole, huh? Zephyros return back to, there we go, Snow. That you were put into my back row through the effect of the Flame Burst. We can now normal summon it to summon the Grapha. Or can we? In response to the Goki Pole, you know, the Wolf recycling the Kirin, that was a problem. That was actually a big play being able to do that. As we now can say goodbye to the Zephyros, we now have a monster negate with the Arvata. Goki Pole attempting to swing in. If this card was sent to the graveyard, we'd be able to add an insect from the deck, and then if you added a normal monster, you could normal summon, you could special summon it, and then destroy a monster in the field. I don't think we play a normal summon. It would simply be add a danger from the deck and then activate it in main phase 2. Now, likely the danger we'd be adding would be fingerable, as another copy would be Engrave, but that was still a great duel. Let's take this into game number 2. Corridor, add a Dark World, then discard a card. That is when we would draw on Lockbird right then and there, triggering Ceruli to special summon itself onto the opponent's field to then discard the Rainbow. And there we go. We now can't card destruction. We also can't draw 2 with the Triple Tactics talent. By discarding the Rainbow, what'd it do? Yeah, I guess it couldn't even activate because its effect is when discarded, the first line, add from your deck. And then if it was discarded from the opponent, which it was, you could also special summon a Dark World from your deck or graveyard. We're going to Triple Tactics out, look at the hand, say goodbye to the Snake Eye Ash, and then sadly just end our turn. What else can we do? Garunix off the top of the deck here as we now make a Linkuriboh thanks to your Ceruli. And with that, we're now going to be making a Dark steal a Dark monster from the opposing player's graveyard as we go straight to battle to then main phase 2 make our Promethean Princess. With our Promethean, we're going to reborn from Engrave our Arvata back on the field. Now, this may not seem like much, but it actually is. We have a monster negate. We have destroy a monster on special summon. We have Papa Kirin to then reborn a Fire King. Ideally, you have to understand how conditional this is. The Arvata has to be Engraved for the Sacred King Garunix to be a disruption. So you'd have to consider that, well, how do you even know this is in their hand, right? And the way to get the Arvata Engrave is going to be through the Promethean. So Arvata gets Promethean Engrave, then Promethean gets Arvata Engrave, then Garunix turns the Arvata into a form of disruption, thus turning this field into triple disruption. Card destruction, discard both players' hands. Now it's public knowledge. We know that Garunix is Engrave, and we know there's no other Fire King in the grave, but there could randomly be a Fire King in the hand. We just don't know. It's very important to understand the differences here, the nuance of how the Garunix works. summon from the deck a Danger Snake, drawing into our Grapha. Allura Darkness getting negated by Ash Blossom. Not today. Ash was an additional disruption that we drew into thanks to the card destruction. We're now down to 3 disrupt. Wow. Couldn't really do much. Now could we? This is actually a play, right? Fusion summon a fiend by banishing materials on it from your field or graveyard. If fusion summoning a Dark World this way, you could discard monsters as material as well. So by discarding the Grapha, that's going to be triggering the effect to pop a card in the field. And then it's going to give us a form of disruption through the Grapha Dragon Overlord of the Dark World. Is this good? Well, it states that when your opponent activates an effect, the effect turns into your opponent discards a card, but if the opponent has no card to discard, then it's not actually a form of disruption while we just have Grapha in hand. So that'll be quite interesting. Promethean Reborn Garunix trigger Garunix to pop an Volcanics in the deck. Volcanics trigger to summon from the deck a Garunix as we now make the rank 8 Xyz. Garunix Hayang. Hayang on summon is not going to be activating the effect of destroying all other monsters on field, but we're going to use the other effect, the open game state effect of destroy that back row card, forcing out the early activation of the Accession. Accession, get fusion summoning. Discard Grapha, banish from the grave. Grapha Dragon Overlord is now here, triggering the Grapha to pop a card on the field. Already popping, we're popping the Hayang, which will trigger to reborn as many Xyz materials as it had. And the Garunix is also triggering since a fire was destroyed, reborning itself as it was first reborn through the effect of Promethean, not through its effect. And now we're going to be making a Raging Phoenix. And as I said, we have no card in the hand. I can't use the Overlord. The Overlord's not a form of disruption if we have no card in hand to turn their effect into discard a card from our hand. As the Zealantis banishes the entire field, returning the opposing field onto the field face down, ready to trigger that Promethean Princess, say goodbye to the Overlord. Now, the Overlord has an effect here, and it is not going to be triggering because it states that if this fusion summon card and its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card, you can special summon a Grapha that is banisher in the graveyard, then each player with a hand discards 1 card. Rip. Lethal damage over the Snake. 2-0'd. Droll saved us both games, right? Droll saved us in game 1 from decking out. Droll saved us in game 2.